Hi, I'm Corey Nathan, and this is Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. Your home for engaging conversations about the topics that matter most in our culture. If you love nuance, if you want to better understand different points of view, if you're tired of the screamers taking all the oxygen out of the room, if you'll enjoy edifying, provocative, and fun conversations among high-profile public figures and regular folks like me, you love talking politics and religion without killing each other. Thanks for spending some time with us. Enjoy today's show. Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, along with my co-host and dear old dad, Ronnie Nathan. How you doing, Pops? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Corey.
Yeah. And we are co-produced by my pal, Tristan Drew. And as always, please hit that subscribe button, rate us, and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And give us a shout on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. And we are joined today by two special guests, Joe Trippy and Christine Trippi. Many may know Joe from his great podcast, That Trippy Show. Really been enjoying that. And Joe's also been running political campaigns at every level in U.S. politics and even internationally, starting in city politics in Northern California, and then jumping into the big leagues on Ted Kennedy's campaign for the Democratic nomination for president in 1980. Joe's also been involved.
I'm old.
What's that?
I'm old.
You're not the oldest on this conversation.
Oh, sorry, Ron.
I've got you by about a decade.
Yeah. But you're motivated by a lot of the same things. We'll talk about, how I've heard your story and have read your book about how you were motivated by the Bobby Kennedy campaign that was tragically cut short. But, Joe's also been involved in some groundbreaking, what we call bottom-up strategies along the way, like when he ran Governor Howard Dean's grassroots presidential campaign in 2004. More recently, he helped Doug Jones win the special election for Alabama Senate seat. He's the first Democrat to get elected to the Senate in Alabama in decades. And we're really fortunate also today to be joined by Christine Trippi, the next generation of Trippies. She also decided to get into the crazy world of politics. Christine started in communications, specializing in special events, social media, and fundraising, and was recently working on the team for Kamala Harris's presidential run. And I can't wait to hear your insights, Christine, about what issues are motivating voters today, how folks are engaging, what's effective, and where you see things going from here. Joe, Christine, thank you so much for joining us. How are you both doing?
Great to be with you, and doing good. Thanks for having us.
Good. Well, let me start this way. I thought we'd start with a little bit of background. Joe, I've heard the story about, like I mentioned, when you were 11, you were really motivated by the Bobby Kennedy run for president in 68.
Yeah.
And in reading your book, the revolution will not be televised. Also, by the way, shameless. Well, not shameless for me. I'm just really, really enjoying it. It was cool to learn about that first city council race you got involved with while you were still in college at San Jose State. Could you share a bit about what really motivated you to jump into the ring and how you got started in politics?
I think it was something in me did not like what I was saying about race in the United States. And I think Bobby Kennedy sort of got me to focus on his candidacy, got me to focus on it, as well as that year in 68 where he and Martin Luther King, the tragedy there. But that clearly manifested itself in the local race in San Jose, where I was an aeronautical engineering major, and an African-American woman named Iola Williams was running against a 22-year incumbent on the city council named Joe Cola. And basically everybody in town said Joe Cola is going to get reelected because the only person who's filed against him, or one of the few people to file against him, was an African-American woman. San Jose's 3% African-American, ergo Joe Cola is going to get reelected. And something about that, just the notion that was enough. That's the only reason, made me get active in a way that I didn't, as an aeronautical engineering major. I was all of a sudden knocking on doors and getting other kids on campus to go knock on doors. And Iola eventually got on the city council. And about the same time, the Kennedy organization was looking for good organizers around the country. Someone nabbed me and said, do you want to work for the senator? And I quit school. I get in my car and drove east as fast as I could, and literally never looked back. It's been a wild ride ever since.
And Christine, I was curious about you. Why did you decide to get involved, and how did you get your start?
Actually, I was thinking about this today. Growing up, I actually hated politics.
Yeah, well,
and it wasn't for the reasons that most people hate politics. It was because both my parents worked in politics. And so I just remember hating even years when I was younger, because it meant that there was going to be an election and that both my parents were going to be super busy. And my dad especially would be traveling a lot. And so selfishly, it also meant that we weren't going to be going on like a big summer vacation.
That did not happen in even years.
Yeah, there's nothing good. Yeah, vacation.
My bad.
Yeah. So while I was completely immersed in politics, I wasn't the biggest fan. But that really changed when I was in high school. And I went to Burlington, Vermont to visit my dad while he was working on Howard Dean's campaign. And it was sort of the first time I was able to see him in his element and be old enough to appreciate it. And he was in this room filled with like these young, cool college kids who were all working on the campaign. And he was speaking to them, and they were hanging on every single word, which was a shock to high school me. Like, I was like, what? It just seeing all of those people and how much they respected my dad, and more importantly, what they were able to accomplish together and how hard they fought for what they believed in. That was a huge turning point for me personally. And after that, I started getting more involved in politics and local candidates. I worked on Ralph Northam's inaugural committee. And then that eventually led to me working on Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. And now I work for my dad's firm and his candidates. And it's funny because my boyfriend was saying, you're always so busy on the even years. So we actually came full circle a little bit, but I really, really enjoy it. And I love the experience. So
Vice President, then Senator Kamala Harris, was that the first national campaign that you were involved in?
Yeah. I mean, besides on Howard Dean, I got to go to some events, but I was younger then. I volunteered.
I have a question for you, Christine.
Yeah.
Name 3 issues that you disagree with your dad on.
Oh, you just want to get right into it.
Yeah. Wait. I want to know too. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I would have to think about that actually.
An inheritance is hanging in the balance right now.
Name 1.
I think he's a little bit more moderate.
Oh.
Than me. It might just be an age thing. But I think I'm a little bit more progressive on some issues. You're
more woke than me, for sure. That's definitely true.
That's funny.
Because in our family, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Corey's the conservative, and I'm pretty woke.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. If I'm the moderate in the family, we're in deep. Pretty far off the charts there.
Yeah.
I did run Howard Dean's campaign. It wasn't like the most center right campaign in the history of the party.
That campaign I was going to ask you about, because that was pretty groundbreaking in a lot of other respects. I use the term bottom up, really grassroots. Was it specifically you're a lifelong, tech head, geek, nerd, if you will.
Yeah.
Was it just knowing that there are these tools available? Was it a longing to reach out to voters in a new way? Was it a strategic thing, or was it a combination of all those things?
It was more, I'd say 2 things. One is I was always frustrated with the one-way nature of TV, with sort of, whether it's an advertisement for toothpaste, everything sort of preaching at you and telling you how great it is or they are, and no way to communicate back and forth, particularly being starting out as a $15 a day organizer in Iowa, where you're at the door, everything's, that exchange. TV just frustrated the hell out of me about how powerful it was. So, going back to Jerry Brown's campaign in 1992 for president, me and Joe Costello, who was working for him at the time, came up with the idea of an 800 number. What if you put an 800 number on the screen and ask people to connect with you? And we raised, I think, $8 million doing that. And by the way, that was but back then the only people calling 800 numbers were sex talk lines. We're not talking about, this was not something that you would see on TV for buying the copper frying pan, right? That started after the Brown campaign. So we got some interactivity, but it's still just this, call a number and you're going to get maybe a live caller on the other. And we're trying to figure that out. But that urge constantly pushed me to wanting to find some way to connect with voters and actually empower them to become part of the campaign. And so when all those years later, I guess 12 or so years later, when Howard went in 2003, when he called, I did not want to run the campaign. I had no interest in running another campaign for president. Or
you have the record for swearing off presidential campaigns.
Yeah, and then getting sucked into one again. And I just said, look, the only way I'll do it is we can do it different. And the tools weren't what they are today. Obviously, the smartphone, iPhone didn't get launched until 2007. YouTube didn't exist. Facebook was on 2 college campuses. Twitter didn't exist. We were making it up. Literally no one had broadband. Very few citizens had the ability to watch video online because the bandwidth wasn't there. But we invented Dean TV, had 200,000 people watching that. But no, so it was more that urge I had all through, again, being an engineering major in Silicon Valley, in San Jose State, and always had this pull between, was a politician going to change people's lives more? Would technology change people's lives more? Or could we use technology to actually connect with people more directly to their government and to their officials? And so I saw the Dean campaign as a way to try that. And then the second piece of it is necessity. There were no big donors or big shots in the Democratic Party, or former members of Congress, or ambassadors, or chairs of the party, in county committees that were going to be for Howard Dean. They didn't even know who he was, and by the way, he wasn't one of the 3 or 4 co-front runners we were running: John Kerry, Dick Gephardt, John Edwards at the time, and others, but they were better known than us. So, where were we going to get the ability to grow, to raise money, to take our stand? And so, it was we had to reinvent how you do it. And I still think that crew that Christine watched, was a privilege to work with those guys. They were just amazing with what they were able to create and do. And again, I think that had a lot to do with Obama winning 4 years later. Once those tools were even more powerful, they could go to school on our mistakes, and we made plenty. I made plenty. And Obama was, also, Dean was a once in a lifetime kind of candidate, but so was Barack Obama in a much different way, and in a way that I think was able to get broader support, and not only get he was able to attract a lot of the status quo players, even away from Hillary Clinton. It started with outside, but he was able to attract the inside, which the Dean campaign never was able to do.
As a politically interested person who's never been involved in a campaign, what happened to Dean? He seemed to be a shooting star. All of a sudden, he was a front runner, and then he had one bad moment with that scream, and the whole thing kind of exploded.
I think that we were a campaign, and Howard was a candidate that made a lot of mistakes early on in the campaign. When he was just starting out. And I think the press corps let us get away with a lot of it, right? Because here's this cute campaign that doesn't have a chance in hell of being elected president, even getting the nomination. So no one's going to stop the front page of the New York Times to say some guy you never heard of and are never going to hear of just said on the stage that if something anyway, so these mistakes were back there. And I actually think the press sort of was at a place where, okay, he's a front runner now. And we let him get away. We let these guys get away with a lot. And if he gives us one more shot to at least tell people, wait a minute, watch, be careful what you're doing here. By the way, he had matured. One of the things is, you early in the campaign, you make a lot of mistakes. Later on, hopefully you get better. So he wasn't that guy that they thought they were trying to tell the world about, but they still wanted to make sure, okay, if you guys are going to nominate him, we want you to know, my hands are clean now. I've made it clear that, that he, whether it was he can lose his temper. By the way, the other side of this was all the other campaigns were building this narrative that he's hot off the hip, he fires first, asks questions later. I mean, all these kind of things that they were trying to create that were all hitting a critical point. And then the one thing that happens is you make a mistake, all your enemies, everybody, and by then they were all enemies because none of them were, these are now campaigns, all four of those campaigns were on the phone on a conference call every morning on a stop Dean call. So you have that happening, the press corps is primed, and we it's an advanced mistake, the wrong kind of microphone, unidirectional. He doesn't know that, and the rest is, the takedown happens. So one thing I'd say is the press corps, particularly with an underdog, loves to sort of watch that story of the underdog gaining on the leaders. And my experience, and this has been being on both sides of it, whether it was was Vice President Mondale in '84, and Hart was the guy who was coming up as the underdog. But man, they just as happy okay, he's here now, watch this, and assist on the way down. And so it's not conscious. I don't mean that way. I'm not attacking the press. I just mean there's something that in the psyche of journalism, that's the story, right? It's a great story that the guy took it. There are now two possible great stories: miracle, he's president, or watch him crash and burn. And so, by the way, I think they're open to both those stories. The press corps is open to both of them.
They're just rooting for a good story.
Right. And now wait, the flaps on the plane look like the pilots put them in the wrong formation. This sucker is going to crash. We know where this story's going. Let's go. And so that's how you sort of get this amplification then. Once you make the mistake, but it starts with you making your campaign, your candidate, or you making the mistake. I made a crazy one the Sunday before Iowa. I was on, Crossfire with Paul Begala, the CNN, show, and one of them goes, "Hey, congratulations on Al Gore's endorsement. Who are you going to get next? Jimmy Carter?" I think Paul was the one who asked the question. And I said, well, watch us at church on Sunday, in Plains, Georgia on Sunday. Now, we were going to worship in Jimmy Carter's church with Jimmy Carter Sunday. But I knew Jimmy Carter wasn't going to endorse us. No hell way that was going to happen. We were just going there. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm live on the air, and I just want to go, please bring it back. Because as soon as I was off the air, breaking news, Dean's going to Plains, Georgia to get Jimmy Carter's endorsement. Well, we get down there, and of course, Jimmy Carter walks into the press room and just goes, "I am not endorsing him. I was never going to endorse him." And now... And this is before, like a couple of days before Iowa. So, then the things like this, that's what I'm saying. We were making, and that's what I mean. It's not just Howard, but the campaign, the advanced person with the wrong microphone, me somehow inexplicably falling into a watch Jimmy Carter on Sunday. I mean, what was I thinking? But I think, I can claim you're operating on 2 hours of sleep max in the presidential campaign at that point. But anyway, so it just things can unravel. Part of it too is that a campaign like ours, you're literally strapping the wings on the plane as it's running down the runway. I mean, it's literally, you're putting the central air data computer and you're putting that in, you're putting an altimeter in, you're praying the guys have strong rubber bands holding the wings together, just as the tower says, you hear your co-pilot say V2 and you're taking off, that the wings won't come off. Meanwhile, John Kerry's been planning this for 20 years, right? That plane was built, Hillary Clinton, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That plane was built. It was, all that stuff. Anybody challenging, even Biden, if you're Andrew Yang or Mayor Pete or Kamala Harris, and even Kamala Harris, who I'm sure had some, at least like put a down payment on the wheels and wings and an engine, was still basically putting it together in the middle of those primary campaigns. And that's how, things can just start to fall apart, not because of anything other than the front runners have advantages, big ones.
I mean, it was amazing that Biden was like, he was like yesterday's dead fish until South Carolina. Then all of a sudden, in 24 hours, he was the man.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought that 2 years ahead of time, I said that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, that people just did not understand the dynamics of a Democratic presidential primary election, that Iowa, New Hampshire, he'd get killed in. There's not enough diversity there for a candidate like him to succeed. But that as soon as he got out of those 2 states, forget about it. It's over. And in fact, I think like 12 of those candidates called me up and said, hey, some will you work for me? Some were just, hey, can you tell me what you think? And I was like, yeah, you're not going to beat Joe Biden. He just had, our party it basically gets down to who can win among a diverse voter pool. And if you can win with diversity, that's the only thing that matters in the end. Those first 2 states only set up that you're one of the people vying for that title, right? They're not. So is it Walter Mondale versus Gary Hart? Well, Walter Mondale versus Gary Hart, yeah, it was a dogfight, but Fritz is going to do much better with with African Americans, Hispanics, et cetera, going forward. Clinton versus Tsongas. I mean, done deal, over. As soon as Iowa, New Hampshire, those early states decide that, it's okay. You now have it down to 2 or 3 people. Which one of them is going to excel in that diverse culture and party that is the Democrats beyond Iowa and New Hampshire? And the problem that Kamala and Booker and everybody in the race had was, I just didn't see how anybody could beat Joe Biden's direct connection to those voters, to African Americans. I mean, and part of it being Barack Obama's vice president. I mean, just a lot of reasons, his own affinity and empathy and things like that. But no, I didn't think any of them would come close once you got out of those early states.
Do you think that kind of requirement to appeal to minority voters to get the Democratic nomination works against the Democratic nominee in the general election?
It often can, and it depends on we're now in an electoral college situation. It's not popular. We've won the popular vote 7 of the last 8 elections. The only popular vote we lost, Democrats for president, was 2004 with George W.'s re-election campaign. That's it. Clinton twice. George Bush loses the first in 2000 to Gore, loses the popular vote to Gore. He wins it when he runs for re-election after 9/11. Barack Obama twice, 2008, 2012. Trump loses to Hillary, popular vote. Trump loses to Biden, even more popular vote. So no, that's it. More comes down then to this each state's electoral votes and what's the demographics of that state. And so that's why you see places like Georgia suddenly becoming competitive for a Democrat who can pull in and excite the diverse voter, the growing diversity of Georgia's voting pool. Texas will take some, maybe it's coming, but it's down the line. And that's why I think the Republicans are long-term, if we still have a democracy, before they, stop people from voting, et cetera. Long-term, it's a disaster for them to continue to push away voters that quote aren't like us, and all those tactics that they use, because they're becoming a basically an older, whiter, less diverse, and a lot of young people who would consider themselves Republicans can't go there because of the race and homophobia. And I mean, just they don't, that generation, that's not how they think about, they may be fiscally conservative. They may not like taxes. I'm not saying they're not conservative, but they just can't stomach the direction the Republican Party's going in. So long-term, yeah. And I think Biden's ability, I'd actually be hard pressed to, tell me who we gave the nomination to that wouldn't have lost to Trump when Biden beat him on the Electoral College by 44,000 votes in 3 states. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not, Kamala was on the ticket, great, but I would not have made that bet. Who else? Sanders, love him if you want, but I wouldn't have made that bet. I think Biden turned out and is turning out, even as, to be exactly the right persona, the right person, the right maturity, the right understanding of the moment to have a chance to pull the country back from the brink.
I thought Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar might have had a chance, but I had another question for Christine. You started your professional career outside of politics and communications, and I'm wondering what having that perspective, if you had started in politics, maybe you'd have a different answer, but having started outside, having a different perspective and really understanding social media, really understanding communications, from fundraising to event planning and everything in between. I'm curious what you think really is, what are effective ways of reaching voters and engaging with voters?
Sure. Well, actually, I was an interior design major.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was still trying to get away from politics at that point. And now I use that still because of my graphic background. And I think we get such great response from digital, ads and things that we can create that you can put out on Twitter, and you can really reach people that way. And I just think that Facebook and Twitter ads are really great tools that we use on a daily basis for our candidates. And I think that digital is obviously the new way to reach voters.
And she teaches me now about a lot of that stuff. I'm still learning. But as much as we pioneered stuff in the Dean campaign, it's just impossible to stay up on. I mean, if I had one more app that I need to learn, is going to break me. So, so I let Christine.
What's an app?
Yeah, I let Christine. I let Christine handle that stuff, and the other people on my.
Yeah, we're getting into TikTok, and it's just everything. There's always a new thing to learn, and it's really cool to see how it's generating.
So, Christine, what's the best part of working with your dad, and what's the worst part?
Oh gosh, you're gonna get me in trouble again.
Can I tell you what the best part and worst part are working with my
Yeah,
dad?
go ahead.
No, I want to hear from her first.
Gosh, well, the best thing is it's just learning from someone who has such a deep knowledge. Like he really has been in it for a long time. And I don't know, it's really cool to see him on that side, because growing up I didn't really understand. And now just to see what was driving him the entire time, it's really cool to see just, him fight for what he believes in and doing the right thing. So that's a good thing about working for him. The bad thing about working for him is I can't lie about reasons to get out of work. Like there's no like grandma's funerals or anything like that, because he knows. But yeah, that's probably the only bad thing.
Corey?
Yeah. So
What's the best and worst? No, I'm teasing.
moments like right now. No. So I can't believe how quickly a half hour, 40 minutes has flown by. So I want to get into some of the nitty gritty. I live in a congressional district, very, very purple. Santa Clarita Valley, in particular, within California 25 is my district. It's historically been the reddest part of this district, but now even Santa Clarita is 48% Democrat, 47% Republican, and 5% independent, according to public voting records. Christy Smith, the Democrat, just lost to Republican Mike Garcia by 333 votes out of 350,000, 0.1%. So one of my questions is, who do you think is going to decide a House race like this one in 2022? And what issues do you think are the issues that are going to resonate with those few who are still persuadable?
I actually think in a district like that one, it's really who we nominate. I mean, it's like it's got to be somebody who's willing to talk to the other side. I think if we don't start, if we stay in our silo, I'm going to talk as a Democrat now. If we stay in our silos, we lose districts like this one, particularly after the insurrection. I think there are Republicans who are, whether they're seeing a Liz Cheney or someone else in the party move away from Trumpism, they're uncomfortable with where their party's going. And they basically then can vote for a Democrat, but only when they look across the aisle, if they don't see somebody, who's angry at them or is in their own silo. I mean, it's got to be somebody they perceive as willing to listen to them on the issues, even if they don't agree with them. And so that's why I think Biden, again, going back to him, that's what he felt like it may have only been 2 or 3% of them that made the difference in the electoral states. But in a congressional district, that 2 or 3%, I mean, when you're looking at 300, 400 vote difference, I suspect we would have won post insurrection. I mean, because of just the difference between what enough Republicans might have thought about, wait a minute, do I really want to go that far? As angry as they were, as upset with the possibility of a Biden presidency as they are. Also, I think more importantly, it's really important that with the House, the Senate, and the presidency, that if we as a party, as Democrats as a party, can demonstrate that government is effective, we got you those relief checks, we got the infrastructure bill, whatever it is, passed, and things are happening. We got the vaccines to you, and we got them there in 2 to 3 times, 2 to 3 times the numbers we said we would in the first 100 days. If that, in contrast with basically a no government party, I mean, a party that doesn't believe in, McConnell saying, my job now is to stop Biden and the Democrats at every chance. I think that if we are effective and successful at being effective and actually impacting people's lives, 2022 we will win a lot of seats that people, in a year, people think we're supposed to lose seats, and we are in a midterm. If we fail at being effective, I mean, look, basically the mantra of the Republicans since Reagan has been there is no government that's good government.
Yeah.
The only good government is no government. If we fail, forget about the campaigns. If we just somehow do not impact and show government can impact your life in a positive way. If we can't do that, then we're just proving they're right. No government, that no good government can exist. If and I think Biden and this administration has been really solidly on that. I think that's why they understand that. And I think that's also why he's not having as much trouble getting votes in the House and the Senate. I mean, holding the fragile majority together to get the votes he needs, even though there are plenty of progressives that want more, or plenty of conservative, moderate Democrats who wait, that's going too far, Manchin being one of those. When it comes to crunch time and the votes, he's been able to deliver because they think they understand the stakes. It's got to be delivering impactful, effective government, getting something done, even if we have to do it without the Republicans. I think if we do that, and we have candidates who they can be progressive, they can be moderate, they could, have different positions on issues, but more importantly, really reach out across the aisle. I mean, in terms of how they talk about it.
So what you're saying is that the key variable in a candidate is style, not policy.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I think Biden's a great example of that, by the way. People thought he wouldn't be as progressive a president as he is, et cetera. He said it's going to be boring. But I think that quality that he listens to me, even though I don't like where he is on this policy, he's listening to me. He always has that. And I think the best thing anybody could do is follow Joe Biden's lead. I mean, I'm not talking about on issues. I'm talking about the tone, and keeping the discipline and focus that they've had on the 2 or 3 things they decided they needed to get done, and they were going to do it, and they're doing it, no matter what else the distractions, no matter who's showing up at the border. And I know that's a problem. I mean, but they stayed on they kept their focus on how they were going to impact people, kitchen table issues directly. And I think that's, while again, the Republicans voted no on everything, didn't vote for this, so I think that contrast is going to be pretty impactful in 2022. If we have a discipline as a party, if Democrats are disciplined enough as a party to keep that intact through 2022. After that, that if we succeed in that, then I don't know what, then people go, I wanted more, and damn it, I'm gonna say so, so that may happen. But hopefully that kind of inter-party squabble, we see it now with Liz Cheney and the 150 Republicans who this week started, signed the letter saying that they want to may threaten to start a new party. We're seeing that kind of schism right now happen on the other side. That combined with a Democratic Party that's being effective and impactful, that could be a real game changer.
I think the elephant in the room is inflation.
Yeah, I think though the reality is we went through 2 pieces of this. I think one was the panic as we went into the pandemic, and you couldn't find toilet paper or anything because of that panic. I think there's a lot of this is sort of explainable by, okay, it's open season now. People are starting to go out and do things, and the economy has been used to providing this many of everything. 5,000 cars are being sent out a week, when all of a sudden there's demand for 50,000 cars. So guess what's going to happen initially? The prices are going to go up. Some of that is the money in people's pocket. I'm not putting that aside. I just do think it's kind of like, everybody's been in lockdown or some personal, even like I think I traveled twice this year in the last year. And this is, we're somebody who Christine can tell you, probably on a plane 150 days a year, but 2 days this last year. Well, I'm going to start, that's what I'm saying. All that's going to start up again. Supply and demand initially is going to be out of whack. You're going to see prices go up. I'm not enough of an economist to then say, is that, I'll rely on Yellen. I'd much rather rely on Yellen than the last Treasury Secretary to tell us, or the last administration to deal with whether the Fed's got and the Fed on whether they've got what they're going to do to adjust interest rates and those kinds of things, or issue to stay involved in the market. But I do think there's a pretty easy explanation for why we would be seeing inflation as the economy starts up again and demand outpaces supply, particularly as people are there. That's in terms of hiring, you got to do that first while demand for supply is happening. That's going to be higher wage. I mean, so all that is, I think, definitely something that's going to happen. And how Biden handles that, will matter too.
So in order to motivate the base, solid Democratic voters, as well as persuade enough of the folks who are persuadable, what I'm hearing is a good case to make in 2022 is competent government. Get out the vaccines, stabilize the economy, stabilize what's happening at the border, which, by the way, I know that, my congressman today on his op-ed that they published in the Signal was decrying open borders and how all the criminals are coming and causing crime in our town, which, by the way, Biden is the administration is reuniting families that
it's doing a good job on this stuff. But that's what I meant about these different things that are legitimate problems, but they're actually handling much better than the outrage machine. Now the Middle East is all his fault.
Right.
The hack on the pipeline is all his fault. Gas prices are going up. Not everything is, that's what I'm saying. I think they've done a good job of, dealing with those things. I mean, they're dealing with the pipeline, but not sort of falling into the trap of hyperventilating both ways and actually moving all those things, to a place in the country psyche that they really don't deserve to be. I'm not saying that the border shouldn't be, but just the way the other side tries to bait you into a fight. And I think a lot of Democrats fall into that from time to time, where we just immediately want to punch back. I don't think that's what I'm saying. I think Biden's got the right way, at least with today, with how to handle it. And the one other thing I would say, though, that we all of us need to talk to our neighbors. And I mean, to our Republican neighbors, to our conservative neighbors, to our independent neighbors, to our Democrat. We all, by going into our silo and staying there and only talking to each other, help keep them in their silo. And I don't mean that, I don't mean that their fault. I'm just saying, if we all stay in our silos and don't reach across and try to sit down, with a cup of coffee with that Trump neighbor that was a good friend of yours 2 or 3 years ago, but you stopped talking to 6 months into the Trump, or maybe 2 days after the Trump, after the crowd lying. That's not a good recipe for making up those 300 votes in the district, right? 2,000 people in your district making a commitment today that they're going to work on literally trying to talk and slowly with people on the other side, probably make up that difference by the time we get to election day. Big time.
So, Christine, what are for you your circle of influence and what you're seeing perhaps in your social engagement online? What are those issues that motivate folks to vote in the midterms? what are those issues, or what are strategies that you can deploy from your, from your position to get that in our district, that 333 votes to go the other way?
Sure. Well, I think sort of what we've seen since Biden has become president, and the 147 senators and congressmen who voted against them and are now supporting voter suppression laws across the country. I think that's a huge issue that is going to motivate a lot of people in the midterms, because we have to hold them accountable for what happened and what they're trying to do to our democracy. And I think for me personally, that's like a huge motivating factor, is just these laws that are coming out of states like Florida and Georgia that are pretty much voter suppression. Like, it's not a good thing. And that's why we need to, hold these people accountable.
Yeah. There are some great resources, by the way, and then then you can jump in, Pops. But I just want to point out that the GOP Democracy Scorecard was put out by Bill Kristol, Elizabeth Newman. There are a number of longtime Republicans that put this together. It's a really easy to use reference, and I just cross matched which were the congressional districts that were won by the thinnest margins, 5% and below, and which of those Republican House members got a D or an F on that scorecard. And there's over 20 of them. So this kind of leads to a question that I had. Are you as bearish as as I'm hearing most about Democrats retaining the House in 2022?
Look, by every historical measure, Democrats should lose the House in 2022. It's just a fact. There's like no, one president, three presidents have not in history. I'm talking about since Washington to today.
I do want to push back on that a little bit, though. That's just a technical analysis data point. It's not really a fundamental data point.
Okay, it's a fact data point, and that is that three presidents have actually not lost seats. One. Okay. The only one to not lose seats in my lifetime in politics was George W. Bush. In after 9/11, literally the election immediately, like 9 months after 9/11. So that, or 12 months later. Anyway, that's one. Two, take that away. You're right. Okay, you challenge that. Let's throw that one out. Okay. The reality, we do not control the legislatures that are going to be drawing the lines for the 2022 thing. They, depending on which, and there's a bunch of people who I rely on, the Cook Report, Dave Wasserman, people who've done real analysis off the census and looking at the maps, who think that given the early census, it's anywhere between 3.5 and 10 new safe Republican seats will be drawn by Republican legislatures with the power of drawing a safe Republican seat. I mean, things like California is losing seats. Montana is gaining seats. You don't need to know that what data point that is. I'm just saying to know that's not. So what I'm trying to say is, if you take all the measures that generally, like from reapportionment, redrawing of lines, historic loss of seats, and et cetera, every single one of those indicators points to a Democratic loss of the House. So that's, you asked me, do I agree? I'm saying that's the reality. You got to start with that. I think that you're right, that doesn't count. Wait a minute. The vaccines, the coronavirus is if we're looking into 2022, the coronavirus is literally down to, totally in control. People are vaccinated. People are back with their lives moving forward, the economy roaring so much so that kids are in school, and so much so we have to, economy's going so strong, we have to worry about inflation, which is a legitimate worry. But I think all that, and the Republicans said no to all of it, the entire way, and are still saying that Donald Trump's president of the United States and Joe Biden's illegitimate. So can we now? On the other hand, I just want to make sure Jim Jordan's not going to lose his seat.
No.
Okay. David Nunes is no. That's my point.
Jeff Seitz, I think, is the leading Democratic candidate there.
Yeah. The problem is we only have the House by like 5 seats or so.
Yes. Yeah.
That, by the way, this is my whole thing. I think losing the House in 2022 would be as devastating, if not almost more devastating, than losing to Trump in 2020. Because you're talking about, they have this 139 people we're talking about. Let's say they have
voted to overturn the election. Yeah.
Right. They overturned the election. Okay. So to get to 218, they need like 80 seats. I mean, that, by the way, they already have like 60 something of them. Right. So let's say they 13, 14 card carrying moderates of the Republican Party gain seats in your district is one of them. So a moderate Republican runs and wins. Okay. They're now one of the 80 sane people in a majority controlled by the 139 who voted to overthrow this election. Do you know who the chairs of the committees are going to be? Do you know who the speaker is going to be? By the way, I don't think it'll be McCarthy. And how many minutes is it till you're in Benghazi-like hearings on Hunter Biden, Ukraine, impeaching Biden, all the stuff? I mean, we will be so far back right in the Trumpism soup that is destroying the democracy, and it's all hanging by 5 or 6 seats right now. So I'm like, hell yeah, we could lose it. Everybody out there, find some of your old friends, start talking to them about where we need to come together and why. Put your purity tests away for a cycle. Support, your candidate, et cetera. But this is not the time to be my way or the highway in a primary campaign, which, by the way, is what happened. That's what Biden was able to do. But a lot of people put their my way down and said, okay, Biden's going to be the nominee. I'm going to support him 100%. And we won. And I think we have to be like that in every district that we can be like that in.
Yeah. So full disclosure, when the election first happened, I was happy about what it initially looked like, which is it initially looked like it was a center holds election. Biden won, but the Senate was still up for grabs. But the Democrats controlled the House, but lost seats. I liked that. But then, Trump turned up the volume on the stolen election. January 6th happened. My own Republican congressman voted to overturn Arizona and Pennsylvania electoral college votes. He voted to keep Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Education Committee. Yeah. He voted against impeachment. He probably
voted to kick Cheney out of the leadership too.
I'm curious how he voted. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he was completely hypocritical in that regard. To keep Marjorie Taylor Greene on the committees, but to kick Cheney out of leadership. I'm sure he did.
I don't need to. You're curious. I just can't believe he didn't do that.
Yeah. Gosh, I could go. I have hours and hours of questions left, but I want to make sure we hit a couple of important pieces of business. The one question I will ask is, well, let's see. Do I want to ask about the future of Republicans like the Kinsingers and the Romneys and the Mia Loves, or I'll let you either answer that question, or if you have a question for us, do you have, so those are your two options. Do you want to answer the question about the future of Kinzinger, or do you want to ask us a question?
No, I think that Liz Cheney has the real possibility of winning the GOP presidential
Bingo!
nomination
You stole my thunder.
in 2024. I've said this for a few weeks on that Trippy show, the podcast, because it just seems to me that we could be seeing the reverse of what of how the party became Trump in the first
2016.
place.
He was the only Trump in a big field.
In a big field of everybody's.
If she runs, it'll be a bunch of Trump wannabes, and her.
And Trump won Iowa with 24% of the vote. And that's it.
Yeah.
And he never did get to 50% of the vote in the primaries.
Yeah.
And the way delegates get picked, et cetera, that just winning by a small margin and then slowly growing a little every time somebody else drops out. That's how he slowly ate the party up. So I think you're right. I think this could be, I've been saying this for like several weeks, that I thought that if she gets in and she's running against, 12 Trump wannabes who are all trying to out-Trump.
She's running against Trump.
I don't think, that's a different thing, but I don't think that's going to happen.
He's going to tease about it until the very last minute. And then,
but I don't think that'll end up happening. But we can get to that. But I think what's the more logical thing that's going to happen is Holly, Cruz, everybody trying, even
DeSantis.
Haley trying to, DeSantis, people that even like you might have early on thought, would be a moderate in the race. No, Haley's going to go crazy over when she realizes that's not going to work. I mean, for her, she'll go and you'll have 10, 12 Trump wannabes. And I think that in a place like Iowa, particularly in some of those early states, New Hampshire, see how the calendar plays out. But I think Liz Cheney could get 24, 25% of the vote against a 75% Trump party. And that winning and the coverage, et cetera, starts to bring a few more points of, common sense people getting their senses together. And she could eat the party back the other way. And then you say, like, boy, Joe, you're rooting for Liz Cheney. Are you out of your mind? No. I am rooting for Liz Cheney and Kinzinger and anybody else and the Lincoln Project and anybody else out there. We should embrace and not. Oh, how can you support her? She's so conservative. She's a warmonger. Well, that Trump will label her with her dad's moniker. But for one, I think she's shown a tremendous amount of strength, and at a time when we need more voices like hers that can bring us. But also, hey, so that gives you something to talk about,
right? With
those people. Hey, what do you think of this Liz Cheney thing? I'm not sure it makes sense that how do they keep Marjorie Taylor Greene but dump her? I mean, can you really, and just get into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this time has flown. I so many more questions for you. One quick point though, and feel free to steal this shamelessly, but as much as Mark Meadows and Jordan were a major thorn in the ass to when Boehner was speaker and then Ryan was speaker, I think that there's a possibility for a new caucus in the Republican Party, call it a truth caucus, for them to be an even bigger pain in the ass now. Get Cheney and Kinzinger and those Republicans who got an A and a B on the GOP democracy report card. But before we go,
well, I think they can. I just don't think they'll have the power is on that 139 side, right? I mean, that's who the leadership.
Yeah, but Jordan and Meadows only had 20 people in their little what do they call it, the Freedom Caucus or something? So
that's true.
I think you can create. You can be a wrench in the machine.
Oh, Cheney's going to be a wrench. I definitely think she is. So let's see what she does and how she organizes it.
I want to make sure folks know how to find you, how to find that Trippy show, how to find you, Christine, and then tell us about Operation 147.
So you can find me at Joe Trippy on Twitter, and that Trippy show, you can get it anywhere you get your podcasts, anywhere you get this podcast. Spotify, Apple, any of them. And then Operation 147 is an organization I helped found, which basically puts pressure on the 147, the 139 in the House and the senators add up to 147 who voted to overturn the election and not certify the electoral results. We are targeting, we're realistic. We know certain of them are in, ruby red, 95% Republican districts are never going to lose. But we are looking at the 13 to 14 of those that we think are in like districts, like at least make up a district like yours in terms of where the, like close races, Trump won by 3 points, those kind of places. There's 13 or 14 of them. And we think, look, there'll be plenty of people who are focused on defending Democratic incumbents, but our intent is to focus our fire on the 13 or 14 of those 147 that we think are vulnerable if we get them the resources. And if people want to check out Operation 147, that's at 147 Operation on Twitter, and there's links there to go to the website and things. So
terrific.
Appreciate
and we'll be linking it too. And Christine, how can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Christine Trippi. I'm starting to post more on
Great.
there. So that's where you can find me. And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for having me on. And it was a really cool experience.
This is a real treat for me. It's so, because you're sort of hero of mine, Joe, even though I'm way more conservative, probably on a issue by issue basis on a lot of them anyway. But I really appreciate your story. I'm encouraged by your Christine, your entry into the game, and just learned so much. And I do think that there's common cause for folks who are committed to, basic human decency. You wouldn't think that that'd be controversial, but I really believe that there's a lot of common cause there.
But that's the thing. I think that when you get angry at the other side, we lose our own capacity to be decent and civil sometimes, too many times. And that's why I think what's important about your podcast and what you do is to encourage, that sense of coming together. And so I thank you so much for having us both on. It's great to have the two father kid teams on at the same time. That's the first time Christine and I've been on, and it was a little awkward at times, and I'm going to have a talk with her afterward.
She has to interrupt you more often.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go. All right, thanks again.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. If you appreciate what you heard here, please go to iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts, give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. That really helps move us up the chart so others can find out what we're up to here. For Ronnie Nathan, I'm Corey Nathan, and we've been talking politics and religion without killing each other. We'll be back in a few days to do our little part in Tikkun Olam.